to jump right in, we brought you this wonderful slide, and I think it really depicts of how a lot of companies are feeling these days. Also, I'm from Hornbach, and we are a DIY retail chain, and we are getting the feeling that we are just jumping from one crisis to another. We are in constant crisis mode, so to say. We had the COVID pandemic with all the lockdowns and disruptions to supply chains. And now we are sliding into a global recession, and we have high inflation, and consumer confidence is really dropping at the moment. And for us, it's really a difficult time to think about climate change, because it's not the topic that is in front of the mind of all our employees right now. But we all know if we don't do it, we will have a huge problem afterwards. And so, that is why we started our journey into carbon accounting right in the COVID pandemic. And actually, I'm the investor relations manager at Hornbach, and it might seem a little bit strange that investor relations cares about carbon accounting, but actually what we have seen is that our investors really started to care about carbon and carbon reduction, and this is mostly because they were regulated to care by the European Union, of course, but we are seeing that we will not get any investors or funds or bank loans in the future if we don't have a carbon footprint, and that is measurable and that we can reduce. So that's why I am here, and I've launched the topic, and it was actually our CFO who said, yeah, we really need this carbon footprint, and we need it in a way that is measurable, that our auditors can audit it, and that we can put into our financial statements. So we are really safe to present it to the financial markets as numbers that are valid and that we can trust. And amid all the crisis that was going on, we were really thinking, we really can't do it on our own. We need a partner who can establish the right processes together with us, so we are really safe on that side. And actually, it was our CFO who forwarded us an email by a company that was called Planetly at that time, OneTrust nowadays. And she was saying, have a look at them, and maybe it could be interesting to work together. And so that's what we did, and that's how we two met. So I will let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Anne. So my name is Andre, and I had the sales team for the ESG and Sustainability Cloud, formerly Planetly. And in this talk, we want to introduce you to how Hornbach embarked on this journey. And as you just heard, they started really from zero. So there's also a lot of companies still out there that are really starting from scratch. And we want to sensibilize you how we did that for Scope 1 and 2 with Hornbach, which is done now, and then how we're going to do this for Scope 3 and the different aspects of Scope 3. I want to give you the word for introducing Hornbach.
Yeah. So I guess when you're from Germany or any other of the 9 countries where we are present, you will know Hornbach. We are a large DIY retailer. We have 5.9 billion in sales. We have more than 25,000 employees all over Europe. And we have, as of today, 170 really large format DIY stores. And we also own part of our logistics, and we also have online shops in all the countries where we are present, and currently make about 15% of our sales online. And we also have a small builders merchant business, which is located in the southwest of Germany and France, with 39 smaller outlets. And what a lot of people don't know, we are also listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. So we are actually subject to all the regulation by the European Union that is coming our way right now. So the taxonomy and pretty soon the CSRD too. And that's why it was really urgent to start with these carbon accounting project, so we are prepared when we have to do it, and we will have to do it at some point in future. So, but Hornbach is not only a large public company; it's also a family company. We have a family CEO, and the control of the company is really firmly in family hands. And we also have already the 6th generation of the Hornbach family working at the company. So it's really not a myth that family companies are thinking in generations, and it really allows us, even though we are publicly listed, we can look a little bit beyond the financial quarters and well, sometimes do the things that we care about and that cost money now, but that will really pay off later. So
Thanks.
I will hand over here.
So introducing OneTrust, giving you a bit of an impression of OneTrust. First question is, who of you have heard of OneTrust? Well, that's actually more than I expected. All right, very good. And I think also most of these companies in the room are using OneTrust products. And just to give you a few numbers, so we are about 2,500 employees now. Just about half of them are in R&D, so they are catering to our products and serve our 12,000 customers around the world. So we are a globally operating software company. And what we do is we operationalize trust. And think about this for a moment. How can you operationalize trust? And if you think about the stakeholder view, the point of view from the stakeholder for your companies, then this might help. So, for example, your customers might ask you, "How do you manage my data?" Your suppliers might ask you, "How do you make sure that your footprint is not as impactful as it was last year?" And the regulators might ask you, "How do you make sure that you are compliant to all the regulations that I impose on you?" So you need to manage that. And in most companies, this is managed by Excel. It is managed by Word, and this is managed by mail. And OneTrust is introducing products to manage that on with software. And we started out with data privacy and cookie management. So that's why I think most of your companies are using these products, because whenever you visit a website of a company, then this pop-up comes and asks you for your consent. And this needs to be managed again if you remove that consent. Additionally, everything around governance and compliance needs also to be managed, as I said before, because people might ask what you're doing in that space. Thirdly, everything evolving around ethics. So do you have a speak-up culture? Do you have a whistleblowing tool that is being managed in a way that you don't, from a employee point of view, that you don't feel that your speak-up will hurt you in any way? Or how do you diligence your third parties? How do you diligence your suppliers? That's being done with the ethics and compliance tool. And last but not least, and that's where I come from, everything surrounding ESG and sustainability. That means having a solid carbon accounting tool And this is being provided by Formerly Planetly. That's why we joined forces, because it complements the ESG tool very well, because it's the big E in ESG. And carbon accounting means it's not just calculation. It means that you're being held accountable for what you calculate. And that's very much important for companies like Hornbach, because they are being audited from a third party to make sure that what is calculated and what is published is correct. That's why it's not a calculator, but a carbon accounting tool, which comes with accounting processes, and not just putting some numbers in and getting a result, but putting around that solid processes, because you need to go through that possibly annually, maybe even quarterly, and then maybe embedding that also in your ESG journey. And comes with the perks of software, of course, so everything is connected and everything might feed into each other. So your compliance and third-party diligence might also feed into your ESG reporting, and vice versa, because you don't want to just to report, you also want to manage that and get better at it. That's what OneTrust does, and for the collaboration with Hornbach, we embarked again on the carbon accounting side, and I want to sensibilize you a bit on what it means for a company with this organizational complexity, and also with the regulations that they are scrutinized with in embarking in that journey. I think most of you have, of course, managed Scope 1 and 2 properly at the moment, and have done that for many years, as we've seen. For, Faber-Castell just showed us that, Axel Springer showed us that, but there's a lot of companies out there that haven't done that yet, and they need to go through that. And that's why we wanted to show you what we did here. And just to give you an example of how this looks in terms of a process, the goal was to publish the emissions in the annual statement and everything that comes with it. So that's why if you look at the top right-hand corner, there's a little triangle that says deadline for annual statement. And that's where we aimed to publish the results of our carbon accounting. And we quickly realized that it's impossible to do everything. So Scope 1 and 2, Scope 1, 2, 3. So we concentrated on Scope 1 and 2 first, and then looked into how we're going to tackle Scope 3, coming to that here also in a second. And if you look at the deadline, we have to go backwards in time. It's not just a calculation and putting the tool in place, but also to manage everything adjacent to that. So you need to manage your board. You need to get buy-in from your board. You need to get this signed off. You need to get buy-in from the auditor, because if the auditor says no in the end, then everything was for nothing, and you need to start a new circle. So you need to include the auditing part in that process as well. And then, most and foremost, you need to build processes around gathering the data, and that's the responsibility of the internal part from Hornbach, to really look where is that data situated. And we're just talking about 1 and 2 data. So it seems to be simple, but it really isn't, because as you saw, it also goes hand in hand with the complexity of an organization. So where is that data sitting? Is there different systems that are governing these data? Is there organizational boundaries that we have to take into account? And we need to build processes around this to do this again next year, and possibly even better than we did this on this project slide, because in the end, in a perfect world, we just click a button and we have the result. And that's usually, or hopefully, what we're going to do this year. This will be much shorter, but again, we started in November with data collection, identifying where was this data coming from, building a process around getting that data into the right format, and then looking if this data was complete. Did we get everything? Is the footprint that we are publishing our entire footprint for Scope 1 and 2? So we need to validate the data, and we need to make sure that the auditor also sees it that way. And all of that we did in November till January. Of course, the tool is the easy part, right? So you, when you have that data, it's our responsibility to put the right methodology in place, to calculate the footprint correctly, to be on top of the current emission factors, to be on top of current regulations, and also on top of standards, the GHG protocol, for example, of course, but also substandards such as the GLEC, which comes into Scope 3, to make sure that the footprint is also comparable to what you're going to do next year to see progress. that's what we did for scope 1 and 2. That's how the project plan actually looked. It's also very high level, and there's a lot of sub-processes, and it produced very, very insightful processes, data, processes, data, and data, and data, and processes. So there is a lot of work that has to go in there, and it is just not a 2-week project. And the market, again, is thinking that this is a two-week project, but we really need to make sure that we don't just calculate and have a result in the end that is really not tangible and really not comparable. So you need to implement that properly. And we just can't get around that. It's an accounting topic, and accounting means being thorough. And accounting means being responsible for what you're doing. And that's what we did here, and I'll give over for the results.
So in the end, we were able to put our footprint in our financial report and in our non-financial group report, in fact, and which has a limited assurance for now by our auditors. But I'm pretty sure that we will very quickly move from a limited assurance for those non-financial aspects to a full assurance, so to say. I think this might come in 2 years when we have the CSRD. We will need to put it in our really in our financial statements, all these non-financial aspects. And so this will even produce more work for auditors and for auditing. And so it's really good that we already went through this process now together with our auditors. So we have a really solid process in place to be prepared for the future. And we also published our GHG report on our website. If you are interested, it's there's a little bit more information in it than in our non-financial report, which is essentially, I mean, this table that came out of many months of work, and yeah, it shows our footprint for our scope 1 and 2 emissions, and we also calculated a relative number per square meter to be able to compare it year over year and to our competitors. And yeah, it might not be the best years to do it, because it was really influenced by the COVID pandemic. I mean, we had store closures in some periods. Then there were periods where we were really busy. We had 3 shifts in our logistics centers to meet all the demand. So this really affected our carbon footprint too. But well, I mean, this year we are really confident that we can actually see a reduction, because like everyone right now, we are trying to look everywhere where we can save energy. So it should show this year more clearly than it did in 21, 22.
All right, thanks a lot. Now, having done scope 1 and 2, that's only, I would say, 20% of the work, right? Because we have to look at scope 3. And for a retail chain such as Hornbach, the music plays in the products, and everything is, you know, purchase, and everything is in scope 1, 3.1 actually. So purchase goods and services will be the majority of the scope 3 emissions. But it also comes with problems, because how do you calculate these emissions if you don't have a grip on the data? And also, how do you calculate these emissions if you have 1.2 million distinct products in your portfolio? And additionally, how do you manage a 25% turnover in that portfolio year over year? Because products might fall out of the portfolio, others might be taken into account, then there's updates in the portfolio. So there's a lot of movement within that scope 3.1 that you need to manage and that you need to get a grip on. So how do you do this? And then from going one step further, we just basically know the numbers right now, but we all want to get these numbers down. And you need to get a grip on the products. And then this is something that also in your presentation just now, it really quickly goes into the core business of Hornbach, because what do? You need to either exchange products, you need to talk to your suppliers to change how they make the products, and that means your core business is at stake, really, that needs to be changed. And then it's not just changing light bulbs, because that's easy, and that's all has been done already. Hornbach already put some measures in place, but that's the very easy doing it right now part of it. The hard one, but with the biggest lever, is getting the products right and getting into a process of working through these 1.2 million products to make sure that the footprint goes down. I brought this slide actually. Is there anybody in the room who doesn't know Scope 3? I figured. So looking at the products, it's just as an example here, a wide variety. And how do you start? How do you analyze your way through that? And you go, of course, in iterations. So first of all, you need to boil it down to product groups, put some categories around that, and this number goes down to about 5K, maybe 6K product groups, still a big number. And then where do you start from there? And the low-hanging fruit here is you need to look spend-based. So you need to look where your hotspots are. So where do you need to concentrate in digging deeper? And you have to pick your battles, of course. You need to, again, analyze your way through that portfolio. It's a multi-year process. So you start with looking at your hotspots. And when you've identified these hotspots, identified the product groups that you want to look at, then in a very simplified way for this presentation, you look at two dimensions. The first one is how much is the revenue share of that product group? So which basically are my fast runners? And then you have to look at what is the data availability, because again, the data is probably only financial based within Hornbach, and the material data and also the data that matters for the emission calculation sits with your suppliers. So the data availability is key here. And again, you pick your battle. So high runners or fast runners with good data availability are the first ones you need to look at. That's that. It's a very simple product. It's a wooden plank, could be a hammer, could be screws, right? But there's a lot of material already assessed in these products. And then you have a look at high runners, fast runners that have limited data availability or none, such as this one. This is actually a house brand. So there's also a different lever that Hornbach can pull with their suppliers. Having a house brand, they might be more eager to give you data around this, but just buying a product and reselling it is a different story in approaching your supplier to ask for this data, because that's what you need in the end. Then you look at the lower right-hand part. So not selling so many of them, but still good data quality. For example, this corkboard. And then you might look at the last, the long tail of the products, such as this one, dishwashers that are not sold so many times, but still the data quality is not so good. Here you might still just rely on spend-based data, because again, this is not where the majority of the footprint comes from. And when this is done and when this is gone through, what's the goal of this? Just having a number is, of course, nice, and you put this in nice reports, but you want to take action. And again, a family-owned business for 6 generations means that you need to be very thoughtful with your decisions. And by influencing a product portfolio, you need to base that on a very, very reliable database. Of course, then our tool comes into place when everything is done. You have analyzed your way through, the data is there. Then we put it into the right emission factors, and we can dig deep into this data and dig deep into the emissions. And then you can make decisions, and you can base them on a thorough database, so that you might want to start on transforming your business, which is a multi-year endeavor. As you also stated, this is something that really goes into the core of your processes. So this is the majority of the scope 3, of course. So there's a little 0.1 in the bracket there. But it doesn't stop there, because there's also the logistics part that needs to be accounted for. And there's, again, this picture that is describing how the value chain from the supplier to the end customer is very complex in terms of logistics. So you might use a ship, you might use a truck to supply the goods to your warehouse. Then there might be another warehouse that you need to go through. Then it goes into the market, goes to your customers. The customers might send it back. Then it goes back to the warehouse. You might need to. So there's a lot of things going on. Here you can't really take the spend-based shortcut. You need to dig into the data. And even more so here than with the products, software can help you with this. So all we need is actually 4 data points. We need to know where it comes from, where did it go, by which means of transportation, and how heavy was it. That's actually all we need. And then we enrich this data by publicly available data. So for example, we say the truck went from A to B. It might, with high possibility, took this road through Europe. Then you know the distance. Then you might know the average fuel consumption for that truck. And there you have an emission data. Same thing for ships, same thing for planes, if they are used here in that value chain. There's publicly available databases that you need to tap into to make sure you know where this ship went from, if there was a stopover involved, if there was maybe also a disembarking of the goods and maybe you using another warehouse. All this needs to be taken into account to be accountable, right? To have the number that is really meaningful and not just a spend-based estimation over your whole of your organization, to again identify where you might put stressing different processes in your transportation value chain. And it needs to be compliant. So I'm not sure if how many of you know the GLEC standard, but an auditor might come your way again and ask, how did you do it? And they, of course, are relying on widely accepted standards. So you need to be sure that you calculated this the right way. Last but not least, there's also, let's say, the long tail of the emissions that are small, but still you need to have a look at them. We call this the admin emissions. So how do your employees come to work? How do your customers come to your locations? How do your employees travel when on business trips? I mean, this is important, but again, this is a small part of the emissions, but needs to be taken into account to have a full picture. And that's how we're going to embark on the Scope 3 journey. It will take us some time, but together with the processes that we have already established for collecting the data for Scope 1 and 2, making also the organization aware that what we're doing here, it will get easier to now tap into Scope 3 and putting that into the wider sustainability picture.
Yeah, so we are aware that there's still a lot to do with our Scope 3 emissions, and actually those really are the most important ones for a retailer, because when you look at other retailers, it's 2% own operations and like 98% Scope 3. So it's something we really need to tackle, and we will. But to wrap it up, I would like to put the topic a little bit into perspective of what we have been doing at Hornbach in terms of sustainability. And well, actually, as a family company, sustainability kind of was always ingrained in the way we do business. It wasn't called like that at the time, but for example, for a long time we have been FSC certified with all our wood products and as a retail chain as a whole. So, and here you see some examples of things we have done, which were really, for the most part, common sense and not part of any sustainability program or something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and maybe one example that was very recent, we introduced a few weeks ago our bespoke working hours, which enables all our employees to have a flexible work time, and which was really not part of a sustainability program, but just common sense in the HR department that we need to do something for store employees to be able to have more flexibility in the future. When it comes to working, because obviously they can't work from home, and so it's just some things we were doing in the past. When you look at our materiality assessment, you also see it's our assortment is core. Second comes our employees, or maybe they are equal, I guess, and CO2 emissions is actually a very new topic, which has been added to our materiality only recently, because the interest from outside is so high. We as a retailer, we don't have a lot of carbon in our operations, so it was not at the top of mind for us for a long time. But obviously now it is, and you can't avoid the topic. And just to have a look on our sustainability magazine, which we published yesterday, it's another way of telling the story. It's sustainability nowadays is a lot about numbers and processes and figures, and we also wanted to find a way to present it in a more digestible and fun fashion. So if you are interested, you can download the magazine on our website. So, and if you have any questions, we are available, of course, later at our round table. So happy to see you.
Thank you so much, the representatives from Hornbach.